My father-in-law slapped me at the baby shower, calling me defective. He didn't know I was 11 weeks pregnant. Enjoy listening my new story.
My father-in-law's open hand connected with the left side of my face in the middle of his own daughter's baby shower in front of 23 people, while I was holding a paper plate of pimento cheese sandwiches and carrying a baby he didn't know existed. 11 weeks. I was 11 weeks pregnant. Let me back up about 20 minutes because that's how fast a family falls apart. 20 minutes. Nolan and I pulled up to Shelby's house on Ridgewood Drive around 2 in the afternoon. It was a Saturday in late September, still warm enough that the front door was propped open with one of those decorative iron doorstops shaped like a rooster. I remember the rooster. I remember everything about that day with the kind of clarity your brain reserves for car accidents and funerals. Vernon was already on the back patio with a Budweiser in his hand, his third based on the empties lined up on the railing like little aluminum soldiers. Darlene was inside arranging a fruit platter with the focus of a woman defusing a bomb. Shelby, 7 months pregnant, glowing, exhausted, was opening gifts at the dining table, while Glenn, her husband, filmed on his phone. Normal. All of it looked normal. And if you'd never met Vernon Willis, you'd think this was just a nice family afternoon. Here's what you need to know about Vernon. He ran a construction supply warehouse in Clarksville for 31 years, and he managed his family the same way he managed that warehouse. Inventory check, chain of command, and God help you if something was out of place. Nolan spent his whole childhood learning one skill, how to make his father's temper somebody else's problem. He got good at it, too good. Now, Vernon and I have never been close, but things got worse 14 months before the shower. I had a miscarriage at 9 weeks, my first pregnancy. I was wrecked. Nolan was wrecked. And Vernon, this is the part that still makes my jaw tight. Vernon told Nolan in private that maybe I wasn't built for this. Those words, built for this, like I was a piece of equipment that failed inspection. Nolan told me about it 6 months later during a fight about something else entirely. He let it slip like it was nothing. I filed it in the part of my brain where I keep things I'll never forget and never forgive. So when Vernon looked at me across Shelby's living room that afternoon, beer number 3, tilting in his hand, and said, loud enough for the aunts and the cousins and Shelby's neighbor with the deviled eggs to hear, "Still no kids, Jenny? Some women just aren't cut out for it, I guess." I didn't flinch. I'd been preparing for Vernon Willis my entire marriage. I looked at him and I said, calm as a glass of water. Well, Vernon, not everybody gets the timing they want. That's it. That's what I said. You can ask any of the 23 people in that room. His face changed. Not fast, slow, like watching milk curdle. He set the beer down on the counter and walked toward me, and I could feel the room get tight the way air gets tight before a storm. He leaned in close, close enough that I could smell the Budweiser and the Altoids he thought were covering it. "You've had a mouth on you since day one," he said, defective and disrespectful. I said, "Don't talk to me like that." His exact words after that. Actually, let me be careful here because 23 people heard the same moment, and every one of them remembers it slightly different. But what I heard standing 2 feet from his face was, "Somebody should have corrected you a long time ago." And then he hit me, open hand, left side of my face, hard enough that the paper plate flipped out of my hand and pimento cheese landed on Shelby's carpet. Hard enough that my ear rang for 4 hours afterward. The room went dead silent. 23 people turned into statues. The only sound was the playlist Shelby had going on her Bluetooth speaker, some acoustic lullaby version of a Beatles song, which, if you think about it, is the most absurd soundtrack possible for watching your father-in-law assault you next to a diaper cake. Then the phones came out. I saw at least 3 screens go up. My friend Brenna, who came as my +1 because she doesn't know how to say no to free food, had hers recording before Vernon's hand was back at his side. Vernon pointed at the room like he was addressing his warehouse crew. "That girl has been disrespecting me since the day my son brought her home." I turned to Nolan, my husband, the father of the baby currently the size of a lime inside me, the man who was supposed to be my person. He was standing by the gift table. His mouth was open, his hands were at his sides. He didn't move. 23 adults in a room decorated with pink and blue streamers, a diaper cake on the counter, and my father-in-law just hit me next to the veggie tray. There is no Hallmark card for that. Before I get into what happened at the hospital, if this story already has your blood pressure up, you're my kind of people. Hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every single one, and some of your time zones blow my mind. Okay, back to the worst Saturday of my life. Nolan drove me to Tenova Healthcare. I told him to. Not because I forgave him for standing there like a mannequin at a department store, but because I needed to get to a hospital and I didn't trust my hands on a steering wheel. The cramping started in the car, low and dull, like a fist pressing from the inside. Then the spotting, light but enough to make every cell in my body scream. 14 months earlier, this is exactly how it started. The same dull ache, the same pink stain, the same ice-cold terror that crawls up your spine and takes over your brain. Nolan was saying something. I don't even know what. Some version of he didn't mean, and I cut him off so fast the words barely got air. Finish that sentence and I will walk to this hospital. He shut up. First smart thing he'd done all day. The ER at Tenova on a Saturday evening is its own kind of chaos. A kid with a broken arm, an older man coughing into a towel, a woman arguing with the intake nurse about her insurance card. They triaged me fast when I said the words 11 weeks pregnant and cramping. A nurse named Keela brought me a warm blanket and I almost cried harder about the blanket than about Vernon. That's where I was emotionally. A heated piece of cotton was the nicest thing that had happened to me in 6 hours. Dr. Anita Rowe came in around 7:30. Ultrasound, blood work, the words threatened miscarriage, which, if you've never heard them, sound exactly as terrifying as they are. She said the baby's heartbeat was still strong. She said strict rest, 48 hours minimum, follow up Monday. She said avoid stress. I almost laughed. Avoid stress. Ma'am, my father-in-law clocked me at a baby shower. Stress has my home address. Nolan sat in the green vinyl chair next to my bed. His phone buzzed every 3 minutes. Vernon, Darlene, Shelby, Vernon again. The man hit me, and now he was blowing up my husband's phone like he was the one who'd been wronged. And then, here's the part that still sits in my chest like a stone. Nolan stepped into the hallway to take a call. The curtain was thin. Hospital curtains are basically decorative suggestions. I heard every word. Dad, calm down. She'll be fine. Not what you did was wrong. Not you hit my wife. Not, I'm at the hospital because of you. She'll be fine. Like I was a minor inconvenience, a speed bump between Vernon's tantrum and the family getting back to normal. I stared at the ceiling. This has nothing to do with anything. But the ER had this painting of a sailboat above the intake desk. White sails, blue water, perfect little horizon line. I stared at that painting for 3 hours. I can still describe every brushstroke on that boat. Funny what your brain locks onto when the rest of your life is rearranging itself around you. Lying there, I started doing what every woman does when something terrible happens. I questioned myself. Was I overreacting? Vernon grew up in rural Kentucky in the 60s. Different era, different rules. He'd never hit me before. Maybe it was the beer. Maybe I shouldn't have talked back. Maybe if I'd just smiled and taken the insult like Darlene does, like Shelby does, like every woman in that family does, maybe none of this would have happened. That little voice lasted about 45 minutes. Then I remembered the sound my paper plate made hitting the carpet. I remembered the ringing in my ear. I remembered the word defective. And I remembered I was 11 weeks pregnant with a daughter. I didn't know she was a daughter yet, but I know now, so I'm telling you. And that man put his hands on me. Number one, I was not overreacting. At 10:47 p.m., Brenna texted me. I recorded the whole thing. 41 seconds. Clear as day, just say the word. I didn't answer yet, but I saved that text. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Why didn't you leave years ago? Why didn't you draw a line with Vernon the first time he opened his mouth? And honestly, I've asked myself that so many times I wore the question out. But you don't see the cage when you're inside it. You just think that's the shape of the world. Let me give you the tour. Vernon Willis controlled everything. And I don't mean he was old-fashioned or set in his ways. I mean he ran his family like a shift schedule. Thanksgiving was at his house, always. Christmas was at his house, always. Shelby got married at the venue Vernon picked. Nolan proposed to me with a ring Darlene helped choose because Vernon said he wanted input on the investment. The man called an engagement ring an investment. That should have been my first clue. Our wedding guest list? Vernon cut 11 people. My college roommate, 2 of my cousins, a coworker I'd known for 6 years. Too many people, the bill's getting out of hand. My parents were paying for the reception. Didn't matter. Vernon had opinions, and Vernon's opinions were law. But the real leash, the one that kept Nolan on a short chain for 3 years, was the $38,500. When Nolan and I bought our house on Pemberton Lane, we were short on the down payment. Vernon offered to help. No contract, no promissory note. Just a cashier's check and a handshake and the words, "Family takes care of family." He filed it as a gift on his taxes. A gift. I know this because I do billing for a living, and I asked our accountant to verify it 11 months later when I started getting suspicious. It was a gift. Legally, financially, on paper, a gift. But Vernon never let it feel like one. Every disagreement, every holiday tension, every time Nolan pushed back on anything, I put that roof over your head, like a receipt he could wave whenever the balance of power shifted an inch away from him. Nolan heard it so many times he stopped hearing it at all. It just became background noise. The hum of the refrigerator, the sound of his father owning him. Then came the miscarriage, 14 months before the shower, 9 weeks along. I woke up on a Wednesday with cramps that felt different from the others, and by noon, it was over. I won't go into the details because they're mine, not yours, and because this story has enough pain in it already. What I will tell you is what Vernon did afterward. He told the family, not to our faces, never to our faces, that I was too stressed, that I worked too much, that some women's bodies just aren't made for it. He said this to Darlene, who told Shelby, who told Nolan's cousin Patrice, who told me at a cookout 3 months later while we were both pretending to care about a cornhole tournament. Nolan said nothing, not to Vernon, not to the family, not to me until it slipped out during an argument about something else entirely. 6 months of silence, 6 months of letting his father's words float around the family like secondhand smoke. That's the Vernon Willis system. He says something terrible. Nobody reacts. It becomes truth. So when Brenna sent me a text at 10:47 p.m. from the parking lot of Tenova Healthcare saying she had 41 seconds of video, 41 seconds of a 62-year-old man slapping a woman half his size next to a platter of cocktail shrimp, I felt something shift. But first, I got a phone call that almost broke me worse than Vernon's hand. Shelby called at 9 the next morning, Sunday. I was still on bed rest, still cramping lightly, still staring at the ceiling and talking to a baby the size of a lime. I picked up thinking she was calling to check on me. "Jenny, what did you say to Dad?" I sat up so fast I got dizzy. "Excuse me? He's never hit anyone. In 34 years, he's never hit anyone. You must have pushed him. What did you say?" Her father backhanded me at her own baby shower, and her first call was to ask what I did wrong. The math wasn't mathing. The math had left the building. I hung up. I didn't have the energy to argue. I didn't have the words. I just pressed the red button and set the phone face down on the nightstand and lay there, feeling more alone than I'd felt in my entire life. My husband was a ghost. My sister-in-law was blaming me. My mother-in-law hadn't called at all, and Vernon was out there somewhere, probably on his 3rd Budweiser telling anyone who'd listen that his daughter-in-law had it coming. But I had 41 seconds of video, and I had Brenna. And somewhere in the mess of that Sunday morning, lying in a bed I didn't want to be in, carrying a baby I was terrified of losing, I made a decision. I was done being managed, I was done being quiet, and I was absolutely, completely done with Vernon Willis. Vernon Willis did not spend Sunday feeling sorry. Vernon Willis spent Sunday building his defense. By noon, he'd called Nolan's Uncle Ray in Murfreesboro, his cousin Donna in Springfield, and at least 2 of the women who'd been at the shower. His version went something like this. Jenny got mouthy. Jenny disrespected him in front of the whole family, and he reacted. Not hit, not slapped, reacted. Like his hand had a mind of its own, and he was just an innocent bystander to his own arm. He told Donna I'd been provoking him for years. He told Uncle Ray that I'd gotten in his face. He told Darlene, his own wife, who watched the whole thing from 6 feet away, that I'd lunged at him first. Darlene called me Sunday evening. I almost didn't pick up. When I did, I heard exactly what I expected. "Jenny, honey, you know Vernon has a temper, but he loves this family. Can we just move past this for the baby's sake?" She meant Shelby's baby. She didn't know about mine. Nobody did except Nolan and my OB and now the ER staff at Tenova. I said, "Darlene, he hit me." She said, "He didn't mean it like that." I need to stop for a second here. This part still sits heavy. Okay, I'm good. There's nothing lonelier than telling someone you were hurt and hearing them explain to you why it doesn't count. Darlene had been doing this for 37 years, absorbing Vernon's anger, translating it into something softer, handing it back to the world in a version everyone could swallow. She wasn't evil. She was exhausted. But in that moment, her exhaustion and my bruise were two different problems, and I couldn't carry both. Then came the money. Monday morning, Vernon texted Nolan. Not called, texted, because apparently threats are more efficient in writing. "I want my $38,500 back. You have 60 days. Don't test me, son." Nolan showed me the text with the face of a man watching his house flood from the inside. Jenny, maybe we should just apologize. Just to keep the peace. He's my dad." I stared at him. This man I married. This man I was growing a human being for. And he was standing in our kitchen on Pemberton Lane, suggesting we apologize to the person who assaulted me, because that person was his father, and his father had been training him to fold for 31 years, and the training was holding. I didn't yell. I wanted to, but I didn't. I said, "That money was a gift. He filed it as a gift. He cannot legally demand it back." Nolan said, "You don't know my dad." "I know the tax code, Nolan. That's enough." He went to bed. I didn't. At 11:30, I sat on the bathroom floor with my laptop and started reading Tennessee assault statutes. Here's what I found. A slap. One open hand slap, no visible bruise, at a family gathering where half the witnesses are related to the person who hit you, often goes nowhere. It's a Class A misdemeanor at best. Vernon could say it was a tap. He could say I bumped into his hand. He could hire a lawyer who plays golf with the county judge and make the whole thing evaporate. My legal options weren't a brick wall. They were a wet napkin. So now, my husband wanted to apologize. The law was a question mark. Shelby thought I provoked it. Darlene wanted me to move past it. Vernon was telling the extended family I was the villain. And I was 11 weeks pregnant, sitting on cold bathroom tile at 1 a.m., wondering if I was the only sane person in this family or if I was actually the crazy one. I almost packed a bag. I'm telling you, my mom's house in Bowling Green is 2 hours north. I know the route by heart. I-24 to exit 2, left on Nashville Road, right on Dishman Lane. I could have been there by 3 in the morning. I could have slept in my old twin bed with the quilt my grandmother made and pretended none of this was happening. I called Brenna instead. 1:30 a.m. She picked up on the second ring, which tells you everything about Brenna Oglesby. I was ugly crying, not the delicate kind. The kind where your nose runs and your words come out in chunks and you sound like a seal with a head cold. I can't do this. I can't fight his whole family. I can't fight Vernon and Darlene and Shelby and my own husband all at once. Brenna let me cry for about 90 seconds. Then she said, "Jess, 23 people watched him hit you. I have it on video. 41 seconds. His hand, your face, clear as day. He's not winning this." I didn't feel brave. I didn't feel strong. I felt like a woman on a bathroom floor at 1:30 in the morning who hadn't eaten since the pimento cheese sandwiches at the shower, and whose back hurt, and whose ear was still faintly ringing. But I didn't pack the bag. Vernon texted Nolan demanding $38,500 back. This man retired with a $1,400 a month pension and a base boat he takes out twice a year. Where exactly did he think that money was going to come from? The publisher's clearinghouse? Tuesday morning, I did 3 things. First, I drove to the Clarksville Police Department on Commerce Street and filed a report. Officer named Dustin Prewitt, young, patient, took my statement, and Brenna's video on a USB drive. He didn't promise an arrest. He didn't promise anything, but the report existed. Paper trail, date stamped, on the record. Vernon Willis struck Genevieve Willis at a family gathering on September 28th in the presence of 23 witnesses. That sentence now lived in a system Vernon couldn't charm, bully, or intimidate. Second, I had Brenna airdrop me the video. I saved it in 3 places: my phone, my laptop, and a Google Drive folder I shared with Brenna entitled Insurance. 41 seconds. I'd watched it 9 times by then. Each time I noticed something new. The way Vernon's shoulders squared before the swing. The way Darlene's hand went to her mouth, but her feet didn't move. The way Nolan, my Nolan, just stood there with his arms at his sides like a boy waiting to be dismissed from the principal's office. Third, and this was the hard one. I sat Nolan down at the kitchen table after dinner. He'd made spaghetti, which he only does when he feels guilty, so the apartment smelled like garlic and regret. I turned off the TV, I put my phone face down, and I said the sentence I'd been rehearsing in my head for 3 days. I am 11 weeks pregnant. Your father hit me while I was carrying your child. If you don't choose us right now, me and this baby, I will choose us without you. Nolan didn't argue. He didn't deflect. He didn't say, "That's just Dad." He put his face in his hands and he cried. Not the angry kind. The kind that comes from somewhere deep and old, from a place that's been locked shut for years. He cried like a man grieving a father who never existed, the one he'd been making excuses for since he was 5 years old, the one who was supposed to be safe, the one who was supposed to protect people instead of hitting them next to a tray of cocktail shrimp. He said, "I know. I've always known what he is. I just didn't want it to be real." That was the most honest thing Nolan Willis had ever said to me, and it broke my heart and put it back together in the same breath. He picked up his phone. I'm calling him. Speaker on. I sat across the table and listened. Vernon answered on the first ring, already loud, already performing. "Finally, your mother's been worried sick. When are we putting this behind us?" Nolan's voice was flat, steady, a voice I'd never heard from him before. "Dad, she's pregnant." 2 seconds of silence. Then Vernon said, "What?" "Jenny is pregnant. 11 weeks. You hit a pregnant woman, Dad." I could hear Vernon breathing. Then, "Well, how was I supposed to know that?" That was his answer. Not, "Oh my God," not, "Is she okay?" not, "Is the baby okay?" How was I supposed to know that, like the pregnancy was the problem? Like hitting a non-pregnant woman would have been fine. Nolan closed his eyes. "That's your answer." Vernon's voice got louder. His default when he's losing. "You're choosing her over your own blood. After everything I've done for you, I put that roof." "You're going to talk to me about blood?" Nolan said. "Your blood is growing inside my wife right now, and you put your hands on her." I barely touched. "Goodbye, Dad." He pressed the red button, set the phone on the table between the spaghetti pot and the paper towel roll. And we sat there, and I'm going to tell you something petty. When Nolan hung up that phone, I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel victory. I felt hungry, like my body had been clenched for so long that the second it relaxed, my stomach just woke up and said, "Oh, hello, we haven't eaten since lunch." I made a peanut butter sandwich at the kitchen counter and ate it standing over the sink with tears still drying on my face. Glamorous? No. Real? Absolutely. That night, Vernon called back 4 times. Voicemail, 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 voicemail. The next morning I texted Brenna, "Send the video to Shelby." She did. Shelby called me 40 minutes later, crying so hard I could barely understand her. I watched it 6 times. "Jenny, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I saw his face before I'm sorry." I didn't say it's okay because it wasn't okay. I said, "Thank you for watching it." 2 days after that, Darlene called. Not Vernon's Darlene, a different version. Quieter, smaller. She didn't apologize because I think Darlene Willis has forgotten how to apologize for things that are Vernon's fault. But she said something I wasn't expecting. I should have said something a long time ago, not just Saturday, a long time before that. She didn't say more. She didn't need to. That sentence was probably the bravest thing Darlene had said in 37 years of marriage, and we both knew it. 6 weeks later, I was 17 weeks along. Ultrasound showed a healthy baby girl, measuring right on track, heartbeat strong, kicking like she had somewhere to be. Vernon had called Nolan 11 times in those 6 weeks. Nolan answered 0. Not because I told him not to. I never told him not to talk to his father. I told him to choose. He chose. The rest was his. Shelby came around, slowly the way trust rebuilds, not in one conversation, but in small, consistent acts. She apologized 3 separate times. The 3rd time, I said, "Shelby, you can stop apologizing and start showing up." She brought a casserole dish the next day. Tuna noodle. Terrible recipe. Overcooked pasta. Way too much cream of mushroom. I ate 2 helpings. Darlene started coming to Sunday dinners at our house. Alone. She'd drive over from the house on Whitfield Road, park her Buick LeSabre in our driveway, and sit at our table like a woman learning how to breathe in a room where nobody was going to yell. She held my hand once, 3 seconds, no words, just her dry hand over mine on the kitchen table, and then picked up her fork and asked Nolan to pass the rolls. That was Darlene's version of a revolution. The $38,500, Vernon never brought it up again, because it was a gift, filed as a gift, documented as a gift, and Vernon knew it. He knew it when he wrote the check. He knew it when he filed his taxes, and he knew it when he sent that bluff of a text message. The leash only works if the dog believes it's a leash. We stopped believing. Vernon Willis, 62 years old, retired, base boat in the driveway that nobody asks him to take out anymore, a house on Whitfield Road where the phone doesn't ring on Sundays. He went from the man who ran every holiday, every decision, every conversation in this family, to the man nobody calls, not because anyone forbade it, not because there was some dramatic showdown or restraining order or courtroom scene, just because 23 people watched him show exactly who he was, and one by one, they quietly stepped away. He did it to himself, every single bit of it. The police report stayed on file. The video stayed in my Google Drive. I never posted it anywhere. I never needed to. The 41 seconds existed, and Vernon knew they existed, and that was enough. Some things don't need to explode to work. Sometimes the threat of the truth is louder than the truth itself. Last week, Nolan finished assembling the crib. It took him 4 evenings, 2 YouTube tutorial videos, and a vocabulary of words I won't repeat on this channel. I sat on the back porch and listened to him argue with an Allen wrench through the screen door, and I put my hand on my belly where our girl was doing somersaults, and I thought, this is what safe sounds like. Not silence, not fear, just a man building something badly for people he chose. Some men think being the loudest voice makes them the strongest person in the room. Turns out the woman holding the paper plate is the one who decides who stays. My next story on your screen right now, and trust me, you're going to want to hear how it ends.